Do we want AI meeting notes on, or are we gonna hold Mark to 100% accuracy?
Are we holding it to?
I just noticed there's a box that says AI meeting.
Yeah, what is that? AI meeting notice.
AI meeting notes, strikes
What is
me,
it?
so next read it later. That's all.
Oh.
It's just, it's, I think, oh, yeah.
It comes on
Yeah.
Okay.
It transcribes.
Is that yours?
No,
It transcribes the meeting.
Read AI, there's another one that I have at home called,
Otter.
Breakout rooms closing in 5 seconds. Just a minute.
4, 3.
Yes, go ahead. I can see them all pop up on the screen. Welcome back to our online manga.
I think in general, it's not great to have people do that AI meeting unless they identify who they are.
Okay. So I'll remove them.
I would ask them in the chat box what you're about.
Don't you have to get their permission? Roshi, don't you have to get their permission too? I mean, you're.
I don't think they did have to get our permission.
Yeah.
Did they get our permission?
Well, on the other hand, they're joining and they know it's recorded, so.
It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's
In the
us.
future, we might want to.
Yeah. I can do that over now. Yeah.
Okay, so this is. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day to all who are mothers to sentient humans, and happy Mother's Day to all who are without human babies but have cats, dogs, geese, whatever. My daughter sent us this morning a picture of a mama with, I don't know, 6 or 7, what are they're not called duck, they're goslings crossing their country road where they live, followed by a big dad. You know how they, it was very, very cute. You all know me, I'm Shishin, Mark Gelula. This morning I'm going to be talking a little bit, not a little bit, quite a bit actually. Somebody should sort of give me the high sign when it gets to be about 30 minutes or 35 minutes. I could go much further and I don't want to. Before I begin, I belong to another Zen center, oh, forgive me. Seriously, it's a wonderful center too, and it's called Breadloaf Mountain Zen Community. And there they say something before Dharma talks, and I kind of thought I'd share it with you this morning. They chant it, but I'm not going to chant it. The Dharma is vast and lovely. We now have a chance to hear it, study it, and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. So, I vow to realize the true meaning of this. I'm right in the midst of Dogen, and he has just filled my life, and I'm not sure what the actual title of this is anymore. Was it How My Life Has Changed with Dogen or My Life with Dogen? But both of them are true. I'm going to do that. I'm going to read a lot, so please forgive me, guys online. Please forgive me if you get bored with my reading. I couldn't do this extemporaneously. I tried to figure out how I could do it, and I couldn't. I've been thinking about this talk for a while, actually. It doesn't mean that I'm entirely ready for it. I'm not as knowledgeable as you may think, giving a talk about Dogen. I really wanted to share with you my really deep dive into our great ancestor, Dogen Zenji, and about how that dive all began. In part the talk is about the paradox that I just presented, that I'm giving a talk about something that I don't feel sufficiently knowledgeable to give. And centrally, how could reading Dogen's words about practice help me grow? Both those things. This is another paradox because it said that Zen is without words and meaning. And here I am talking about meaning through words. Dogen Zenji is the mountain that he came from. And I want to tell you a little bit about Dogen first. It's appropriate to mention something about Dogen and his mother. His mother died. His father died quite young, when he was quite young. When he was, I think he was 8, and when he was 11, well, first of all, I should say he was born in 1200. So we're talking about the 13th century, the first half of the 13th century. He was born in Japan. His father and mother were courtiers. And as I said, his father died when he was quite young, 8, and when he was 11, his mother died, and he had his first awakening when he saw the incense going up and disappearing during his mother's funeral, and he realized the idea of impermanence. So he never forgot that, and he joined the temple, became a monk very early, shortly after that, actually, because he had no one except an uncle at that point. So I think just to say that he lived a number of years trying to figure out what was going on. He went to China, which was a difficult trip at that time. When he was about 22 or 23, I should say also that Miyogetsu is in this program with me, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And Lori Shinko Snyder, who most of you know, is also in it periodically. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but every now and then I'll look to you and she'll, yes, that's right. Miyogetsu knows a lot too, or maybe more than I do. Probably more than I do. But at any rate, so he went there and he was trying to understand, he wanted to learn more, and he met a teacher, Rujing, who became his teacher. He had transmission from Rujing. Rujing died. He went with another person, another monk. That monk died while they were in China. And Rujing died when he was in China, when Dogen was in China. But before he left, he had quite a set of instructions from Rujing, and he brought back 300 koans that Rujing gave him. And I brought some of the books we're using. That book is called Shinji Shobogenzo, and it is all of the 300 koans by that Dogen translated into Japanese. So anyway, in January 2017, now I'm moving right to now, okay, Genzan Kanel Sensei began to teach a group of Zen students from Opaya community in Santa Fe. And he chose Dogen Zenji's massive life work Shobogenzo, or Treasury of the True Dharma Eye, which refers to the treasury that every human being possesses within themselves, the eyes of truth, which allows them to see and experience reality directly. So Genzan thought this would be, this is the true Zen teaching. Dogen started Zen, we should teach this, I should teach this. So he did, and I don't know who told me about this group. I wasn't living at Upaya. I was here in Chicago. It was my period of absence from this community, and I was trying to find something. And somebody told me about these sessions, so I wrote Genzan. He didn't know me really, and he said, sure, anybody can come. And I said, well, I'm not there. I'm here in Chicago. And he said, oh, well, we'll figure it out. And there wasn't Zoom yet, I don't think. There was, what was that other thing we used to use? Say it again? Yes. Skype, yes, Skype. So I got on with Skype, thank you. So Skype, does anybody use Skype still? Probably not. Say what, Paul?
They just shut it down.
They just shut down? Mm-hmm. Okay, so at any rate, I was on Skype, and they put me on like a lazy Susan. So they were all in a circle, and so when each person spoke or read, they would turn me. It was very, very cool. But I became a member then, And I was the first online student. From those beginnings, 3 students remain. 2 guys and I. However, numerous others have joined and many have left, and as I said, Miyugetsu has been a regular for how many years now? 3, 4, 5? Yeah. 2017, it's 8 years. And I said Lori. And, Dogen, Genzan asked me to mention a dear friend who died. Sadly, a few years ago, we lost a dear and wonderful peer, Bruce McDonald, whose life ended very suddenly with a stroke. He was an uncommonly, and I mean uncommonly astute, intuitive interpreter of Dogen. I'm sorry, Corey. He was a great guy. I miss him dearly. Mostly there are about 8 of us who show up on any given time, sometimes 10 or 11, sometimes just 3 or 4 of us, including Genzan. The group began, before I began, with reading Fukanza Zenji, which I've talked about a couple of times here, and you all know Fukanza Zenji is about sitting zazen. So it is actually not one of the fascicles in Shobogenzo. Usually it's found in an appendix. But people very often like to start with that because it is the essence of Zen, to sit zazen, or one of the essences maybe. You might wonder, I joined then after that, and they were reading Bendoa, which is the first of the fascicles in many of the versions. Let me take a break here and now say that there is no formal way. People think, it's got to be the 95 fascicle version, which happens to be the one we're reading, which is translated by Dajihashi Kaz. Kaz translated this. This is the 95 fascicle version. He and other people like Ed Brown and Roshi Joan Halifax and many other famous American Zen priests. At any rate, there's no formal way of doing it. There are 60 fascicle versions, there's a 75, and just recently I was attending online something that Tricycle did last Tuesday, and there's a 12 fascicle version that they found. Were you there? So, Miyugetsu and I were there, as was Brian Joshin Burns. He told me he heard my question. Anyway, so they began with Fukanza Zenji. I started with Bendoa, and that was about 3 months later. And you might wonder, well, why did it take 3 months just to read Fukanza Zenji and then Bendoa? And so here's the structure. This is why it took so long. First, we read an introductory poem from a book that Taigen Dan Layton wrote, and it's called Songs for the True Dharma Eye, and they are poems that he has written for each of the fascicles. Then, and usually Genzan puts all this stuff up online for us, so I'm a book guy, so I have many of these books. I happen to have that one as an ebook, but mostly people don't have the books. Then we begin reading the first of 3 to 5 translations. So we usually start with Gudo Nishijima and Chodo Crosses, and this is in 4 volumes. This is the Shobogenzo in 4 volumes. And we are just at the end of, we're just beginning the 3rd volume of this. Then we read, actually now we've begun not reading that one at first, because when this came out, we shifted to this. So this is a massive 1,200-page edition of the Shobogenzo. It's by the Soto Zen Translation Project. And I'm just going to show you, the people online are going to have trouble seeing this, but those of you here can see this. This is in Japanese and English. Obviously, none of us, well, not obviously, but none of us can read the Japanese. But what happens is that not only is there the translation, but there are massive footnotes at the bottom of every page, and those footnotes often translate literally what the Japanese word means and talk about the play in words that Dogen has. Now, this play in words is really lovely and a pain in the neck for us trying to understand it, because it doesn't make any sense at all. It really doesn't, and we have to sort of let it, and this is what Dogen does for me. What I do, I let him just wash over me, because honestly, if I try to use my mind to understand him, it's like trying, I think the whole thing, the whole set of works is a koan for me. And so I let it be a koan for me and just wash over me, and I just live with it for the period of time that we're working on that particular fascicle or chapter. Anyway, I wanted to show you one other thing. In addition to these pages with the footnotes also reference this glossary, which in itself is almost 600 pages. And the glossary has discussions and long pages, sometimes 3 or 4 pages, about something like, for example, like the well looking at the donkey, the wonderful painting that you've done of that, Roshi. I love that painting. You know I love that painting. I told you that in the box. Just let me read you, just to give you an idea. This is in basic English. Like the well looking at the donkey. Neo e soro, so it's given in the transliteration. The punchline of a dialogue teaching Charles-Shan Benji and Senior Seat Day, dates unknown, the version found in Dogen's Shobogenzo in Chinese script, Shinji Shobogenzo, so that's in this. And it reads, Chan Master Benji of Chaoshan questions Senior Seat Day, saying, the true Dharma body of a Buddha is just like empty space. It manifests its shape in response to beings, like the moon in the water. There's a full moon coming up. How do you explain the principle of this response? Day said, like a donkey looking in a well. The master said, you talk big talk, but what you say is only 8 or 9/10 complete. Day said, Reverend, what would you say? The master said, like the well looking at the donkey. And then it goes on for a little more and talks about that. But some of the little more continues for pages and pages. So it's a wonderful extra resource for us. So when we read when we read the fascicle, we also read all this other stuff. It's extraordinary. And I'm way beyond what I thought I was going to talk about already. So we've made our way through 43 fascicles. We are now on the 43rd, called the Moon, plus Fukanza Zenji, and I think it's really remarkable that we're on the Moon. What I do with my phone. I want to read you something that Genzan sent us this morning. We have a full moon, so he sends us a recording of our sessions, and he sends us, when we begin, all of the handouts, the readings. He says, we have a full moon tomorrow and tea following that. Thank you all for your practice. The whole world benefits. So I wrote him back a quote from the moon that we're reading. Though there may have been a moon last night, tonight's moon is not last night's moon. We should investigate the fact that tonight's moon, whether early, middle, or late, is tonight's moon. Because the moon succeeds the moon, while there may be a moon, it is not new or old. You've just heard typical Dogen. Truly typical. And that's true. The moon is not new, and it's not old. Not 2, not 1. There it is. Right there. Just look. I really like that, and I think I was happy to send him that because it reminded me of that quote. And Genzan asks us to study by copying the fascicles. I have horrible, I've mentioned this before, I have absolutely horrible fingers and arthritis in my hands, and I have difficulty writing. If you saw my handwriting, it's worse than my wife's. Hers is pretty bad. She learned hers in med school. Mine has gotten worse. So I can't write them out, but I found that I can write quotes. So this is a quote that I had written down, and I was happy to copy it back through typing back to him this morning. And it really helps, whether we write the full thing or whether we write quotes. We're right in the middle of the fascicle in another way too, and it gets imbued into us that way. So a little more about tea with Dogen. Along the way, we paused for 2 teas on the traditional structures of koans. We had it because there are so many koans that we read. We stop and we read the koan that is referenced in the footnotes or that is actually there in the paragraphs that Dogen presents to us. We had a tea session on the 12-fold chain of causation, or dependent origination, because there was stuff that was going on, and some of us said, we don't know what that is. So we studied it. And we had another on the sense gates of consciousness. On another occasion, Jundo Koen came to talk about his book on Dogen. Jundo Koen is a Zen priest living in Japan. He runs Tree Leaf Zendo and On Life Zendo, and his book looks at Shogo Genzo as a jazz piece. And I want to say to you, that was interesting. Very. I'm not sure I got the point, actually, but it was kind of fun. Griffith Falk came to talk on translating Dogen with this project. He was one of the translators, and we somehow got a hold of him. And he was a real academic, and it was really, really interesting to hear how they talked about Dogen among themselves and how they finally decided on certain aspects of the translation. These aren't like classroom sessions, thank God. We're all Zen students trying to grasp Dogen's meaning, including Genzan. There's no real teacher per se. I mean, he certainly is like the teacher, quote unquote. I think that's because he takes more time looking at it and really delving into it. And he has a much deeper training. He's a full Zen priest. He's been around the block. But he, like us, is just trying to prize Dogen's meaning. Well, Dogen, I already mentioned, is partly in Chinese. He wrote mostly first in Chinese and then some medieval Japanese. And then his successor, Eijo, copied Dogen's stuff. And those are mostly the versions that we have, Eijo's translations. I think that's correct. But it's just difficult in itself. I mean, now we're going from Chinese to medieval to another writer, Eijo, and now we're into various English translations. I mean, here we've got 3, 4, and actually there are 2 others that we sometimes read that are completely online that we just have the PDFs for. So one from Nishiyama Roshi and the other from Mount Shasta Abbey. So 5 translations in English, and they're all different. I one day took actually twice, I took all 5 translations and I put them into Claude AI. And I said, give me a 6th translation. It was really kind of neat. It was really neat. But it was basically still the same story, the same line, just different words, different ways of looking at it. I urge you, if any of you are into AI, to kind of do that for anything. Just remember that AI is quite often wrong. Really. Anyway, so as I said, it's difficult in itself. It's often obtuse. You already heard that when I read you some stuff. It's paradoxical, as I said. It's filled with allusions to Chinese sayings and verses from sutras and other literature. Dogen quotes a lot from the Bodhi Sutra. It was his favorite sutra, and it's all over the place. the whole chapter that we read on Avalokiteshvara trains a lot back onto the Lotus Sutra. There's one of my favorite that I'm going to mention here in a few minutes, Hoki Ten Hoke, which is Dharma flowers turning Dharma flowers, is a direct allusion to the Lotus Sutra because it's also often referred to as Dharma flowers turning Dharma flowers. So many sutras, and sometimes we don't even know which sutras he's particularly talking about. And then I said koans, another literature, and I talked about the koans. These are 300 koans, but the people say, well, if you turn the Shogo Genzo upside down, you get 1,000. Well, there aren't 1,000, but I think there are those 300 for sure, and maybe some others that aren't in Shinji Shogo Genzo. So, as I said, I realized I can't, even though I've been doing this for 8 years, I can't comprehend Dogen, not right away. So I let him wash over me. I let him just live with me. And the copying helps to some extent, enters my heart-mind eventually. Through the reading and copying and being with a part of Tea with Dogen and just living with Dogen, I've come away with several personal ideas about the essence of Dogen. And here's what I think Dogen really comes down to, and there's a bunch of things though, so he didn't come down to just one thing. Although if I had to say one thing, it's that reality is right in front of us. But first, I think he established an understanding of what I call radical non-duality, and I'll say something about that in a second. He believed in practice and realization as one unified reality. I think he understood that in sitting, we are Buddha. He says that directly, actually. He also recognized that in Zazen, we are enlightened. He doesn't say that in Zazen you become enlightened. He said we are enlightened in Zazen. Zazen and enlightenment are one. I think he had a unique understanding of Buddha nature. A lot of people, well, I'll just read what I said. It's woven right into everything, the ordinary, the profound. It's all connected to this total existence. A lot of people think we have Buddha nature. Dogen says we are Buddha nature. And in that way, of course, then it's connected to our total experience. I think his interpretation of practice and reality, that reality paradoxically enlightens itself through our practice. I'll say that again. Reality paradoxically enlightens itself through our practice. So if everything is, if we, in our practice, we see reality truly, then that enlightens reality. It's a wonderful notion. And lastly, his strong sense of ethical and moral behavior. He's all about doing the right thing, and he gets really angry at people who don't get it. He gets really angry about Hinayanas, about the Hinayana approach to Buddhism, and he says, no, it's not that way. It's the Mahayana. It's caring about all beings, helping all beings live in a proper way. And what's the proper way? To care about others, to recognize reality is right in front of us. So how did all of this change me? Well, I can't answer that directly, but I can point to a few things. Pointing's not very helpful, but the things are, like pointing to the moon is not the moon. That's a paradox. Let me give you some things that I think help me change. I think the first text by Dogen that truly I should say though that what changed me. Now I'll save that for later actually. And how I changed, I mean, I'll save that. I think the first text by Dogen that really changed me and that captivated me was called One Bright Pearl. One bright pearl, or you might say one bright jewel, the one jewel. What is the one jewel? Like us being present, being aware. Imagine each moment is just absolutely perfect, he says. How can that be? Dogen talks about this perfect world, and doing so, he speaks about the moon. He speaks about the moon a lot, in many, many different fascicles. But I'm going to read you something here in a second. Each moment in the moon, he represents truth, the ultimate truth, awakening, realization. Often in Zen, the moon refers to our true nature, or the nature of reality. So there's our relative world, and at the same time, the absolute, or reality. Pointing to the moon, there are two sides, yet both sides are still the one moon. I didn't get that at first. I had no idea. I mean, I knew there was the other side of the moon, and I knew the moon is one thing, but I didn't get that not two, not one. I didn't get that whole thing. It just wasn't there for me. And this teaching, One Bright Pearl, helped me realize that. In One Bright Pearl, Dogen relates a story well known to many of us that I'm going to read to you right now. If I can find it. A man sewed a valuable pearl inside the clothes of a dear friend who was drunk, as told in the Lotus Sutra. So I'm reading from Dogen right now, and Kaz has entered this little phrase here, as told in the Lotus Sutra. A dear friend always gives a valuable pearl. When a pearl is sewn inside one's clothes, one is always drunk. This is One Bright Pearl, the entire world of the 10 directions. All things turning or not turning, seen when one is drunk or sober, or One Bright Pearl. Knowing the Bright Pearl is One Bright Pearl. This is how it is with the Bright Pearl. So the story was that this friend runs into his drunken friend and he says to him, "What's with you? We've got this pearl." And his friend said, "What are you talking about? A pearl?" He says, "Yes, you do." And they have this conversation. And so the friend, the drunken friend, falls asleep drunk. So his friend, the good guy, takes the pearl and sews it into this man's clothing. And then walks away and leaves him, hopeful for his life. Years later, they run into each other, and the drunken man is still a drunken man. And he says, his friend says to him, "Why? What's going on? Why are you this way?" He says, "I don't know, I just can't find life. I just can't put myself together." He said, "Of course you can. The pearl, it's been with you all this time. I sewed it into your clothing." That's the koan that we read, basically, that Genzan, that Dogen was just referring to. I don't know, am I being too obtuse for you all? Perhaps, I'm sorry. At any rate, that's Dogen, that's the problem. Okay, so the guy missed seeing the world for all its beauty, but it was there all the time. I'm so uncertain when I really began to practice more deeply, but I think it had to have been when I encountered One Bright Pearl. And at the same time, I learned about the idea, as I said, of the two sides of the moon still being the moon. And that meant, for me, I started to practice facing the issues that were right in front of me. It didn't work immediately, but slowly I saw how facing problems was facing reality, and that reality wasn't necessarily bad, just different. You know, we're facing a really, really difficult reality right now in Washington, in our country. But I say all the time, it's horrible, and it is horrible. But it also is not horrible, it's something we have to deal with. And if we just think it's horrible and then we walk away from it, we're not gonna change things. And in life, I've learned that I just have to face things in exactly that way. So, One Bright Pearl, and then Genjo Koan. Adrian talked about Genjo Koan beautifully last week. Beautifully. And And we've talked about Genjo Koan in here. Roshi's talked about Genjo Koan a number of times. Genjo Koan and Bright and Bright Pearl, for me, were part of our early reading, and also had a great effect on me. And so was another one called Buddha Nature. It's not called Mu, it's called Buddha Nature. As I review my growth, I think that each of these helped me see the truth of emptiness, and with it, as I noted, non-duality. Through Genjo Koan, I think I began to see how I had to pay attention to everything in every moment. Of course, it's not easy to do, and to do it, I think a person has to be careful not to become either obsessive or neurotic about it. In a way, living, and those old Zen monks, they weren't neurotic about it, because they were up on the mountain, they were there with birds and trees, and lovely mountains, peaks, and they were digging holes. Did you learn how to dig a hole? Did you learn how to dig a hole? You bet. But they would have done it to me.
You cannot do it without help.
Well, they did, these old guys. They did it without help. But they weren't neurotic, they really weren't. In a way, living Genjo Koan, I began to see how every moment is complete within itself. Seeing that and living it are two different things. I think at first I was really intellectualizing. But something was happening. I want to tell you another story that's in these. It's a story about a great scholar of the Diamond Sutra. He leaves his temple on the way to find another scholar. He's an academic, like I was, like Mark is. And he meets an old lady at the crossroads, selling rice cakes. The old lady asks him what he's doing, and he tells her that he's a scholar of the Diamond Sutra, and he's going to another temple to teach them the Diamond Sutra, and to show everybody how much he knows about the Diamond Sutra. And she says to him, "Bollocks, I'm not going to give you any rice cakes. I'm not going to sell you anything unless you can answer my question." Now, Zen stories are filled with wise old ladies at crossroads. And this is just one of those beautiful wise old ladies. And of course, he can't answer the question. She asks him this question, he can't answer it. And she says to him, "See, you can't answer it." And he can't believe it. And he takes his books and he just burns them and returns to his previous temple to begin to learn, to begin to study. And so I realized that my intellectualization was not helping me. And this was a great story for me, a really good story. More happened as I encountered Buddha nature. The common thrust of Buddha nature is that we all have it and it stays with us. Dogen emphasizes that Buddha nature is not a static entity living within us, nor is it something that we can gain in a future state. He says it's immediate and present in everything. He talks all the time about things we think are non-sentient, but they are sentient. Rocks, tiles, walls, trees, plants, and of course dogs and cats and geese. Not just commonly thought of as sentient beings. In this chapter, Buddha Nature, I think he's urging direct experience over intellectual interpretation. And that, along with what I mentioned about Genjo Koan and One Great Pearl, really, really affected my practice. I'm sure that's when it took off. Probably when I started buying more books. So even though with a little bit of copying, and mostly there's reading, but there are limits to reading, right? So I found Genjo Koan, as I said, extremely difficult to understand, even after reading a number of translations. He's direct in it, but sometimes I can be a really black and white guy, and I just found this piece extremely obtuse for myself. Over time, I realized two things for myself about Shobogenzo in general. And this is in reading Shobogenzo. Quite often, Dogen tells us right from the start what the chapter is all about. And once I realized that, I stop myself and I really read those first paragraphs to say, okay, what is he saying here? because this is what it's all about. And he usually does this very formally because at the end, he'll have a story or a koan or something that sort of ties it right back to the very beginning. So I know I'm right about this, I just have to grasp what he's saying at the very beginning. It's sort of like, if I pay attention to that, it's sort of like, remember when you went to grammar school and they said, okay, read the first paragraph. That's really important. Then read what follows and study sort of in that linear way. Well, that's sort of how I've learned to do it, kind of in that grammar school style for myself. For example, at the beginning of Genjo Koan, he cautions us against living through comparisons, not to imitate other practitioners or vicarious spirituality, what he calls counting the treasures of others. So here's a quote from the beginning. Do not be concerned with the faults of others. Do not be obsessed with the treasure houses of others. Realize that your own treasure house opens of itself, and you will use it at will. When I read that the first time, I thought, I don't even know what my treasure house is. What's a treasure house? You know, I have no sense. I mean, I know what a treasure house is. What's a treasure house here? I couldn't get it. And he was saying to me directly, any analysis alone is going to keep you, Mark, Gelula, Shishin, from realizing your Buddha nature, from realizing Buddha nature at all. Stop analyzing. Because Buddha nature is just not just about me. Buddha nature is about everything in the immediacy of life. This was another huge wake-up for me. And he was talking about Buddha nature in the middle of Genjo Koan. We think, oh, Genjo Koan, the koan of everyday life. Well, the koan of everyday life is living your Buddha nature, living Buddha nature. Yes. Time. What time is it? 45 already? Oh, wow. Well, then, I just want to say what I've learned, which is nothing. I want to say that, I can say this without reading because I know. Before most of you knew me, and sometime during the period that you have known me, I was really a nasty person. I was very egocentric. I was angry and argumentative. Roshi and I know about my argumentation. It does. I didn't want to say that. So that's an important part of my life, though, that I have really mostly left behind. Not entirely, I'm human. But I'm far less argumentative. I get far, far less angry. And I know I'm far less egocentric. I'm much, much more interested in what's going on with other people. I don't know how that happened, but I believe a lot of that happened, certainly through my sitting practice, which intensified with my reading of Dogen, no question about it. And I think it's also just with reading Dogen. So it's a wonderful thing for me to say to you that I changed through reading with Dogen, and Dogen is an incredibly important part of my life. I'm happy to have been to share that with you. Any questions? Yeah, Sam.
I liked your comment on that, remembering correctly, it's that the moon is both the dark side of the moon and the part that you see. And I feel like that's such a wonderful idea of just the multiplicitousness of how the world is more than just our perception. You know, it's more than just our conceptual idea of the world. It's interesting to think about, you know, there's so many unseen influences around us that we kind of sort of write off because we assume we know the true nature of things, and in reality it's so much more than that. So I thought that really, you know, struck me as good.
The donkey looking in the well looking in the donkey. Thank you, Sam.
Shishin, I love your passion for Dogen that you share with us. And I'm curious about that radical duality of Dogen's. Can you say a little?
Well, I tried to a little bit.
Possible to talk about that?
Yeah, I did write something about it, but let me back up here and find where I wrote, because I was going to get to that.
You don't seem to have a unusual. We can talk about that later.
Yeah, no, I think I can. I'm trying to find my, I can't find it right now, I'm sorry, but I will have to talk about it. Yeah, for sure, I'm sorry, you know, when it's all there, when I'm following myself literally, but, yeah, and we can talk about it, but it's radical in that most people think of non-duality as just emptiness, but I think he talks about it more than just emptiness. I think he talks about it as living in a way that we marry impermanence and emptiness, I think. But I'm not really secure with what I just said then either. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm not sure that I understand everything that I wrote about. It just sort of flowed out of me a little bit. Anyway, any other comments, questions? I'd love to hear some more. Yes,
Thank you for your talk. And I was curious, you mentioned that Dogen said even rocks and walls are sentient beings.
Mm.
And I was always curious about that because Buddhism would always say the practice for sentient beings.
That's right, we do.
And I was wondering, why is it sentient beings? Why not just all beings?
Actually, you're absolutely right. Dogen doesn't say sentient beings. Dogen talks about all beings. And he talks about rocks, walls, pillars, tiles. Yeah, that's a really important point. And I thank you for that correction. Yeah.
So was he saying that rocks and walls are sentient?
Yes, he is saying that they are sentient. Because they are the embodiment of us. Right? You build the house. You create the garden. You build a wall. It's not just a wall. It's your wall. It's our wall. It's our Zen center.
Thank you so much. I learned a great deal. I really appreciate it.
Can everybody hear her? No. Come on over here.
I will.
No, right here.
All right. Okay. So, no, I just wanted to thank you for the historical context as well. And I learned a lot about Dogen, and there's so much more to learn. But one of the things I really liked, one of the, I guess it's a koan, but the one bright pearl.
Mhm.
That's just a beautiful concept to think about, that we're all sort of traveling, whether we know it or not,
With the pearl.
with the pearl, and we're going to remember that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Adrian. And I want to know that maybe, Andrew, just one second. I'll get you. Somebody online? Anybody? Zip? Nada? Okay. Forever hold your peace? Okay, Adrian.
I want to thank you very much, and I'm going to go back to my, what feels like eternal reading of Dogen.
Can you all hear her?
No, you gotta speak up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There's a microphone.
Yes.
So I wanted to thank Shishin because I will go back to my endless reading of Genjo Koan with a new thought about it. And I'm doing the same thing, watching it over. But the impermanence and emptiness is so interesting. You said marrying.
Yes,
And
that's
it's-
the radical non-duality.
When you start thinking about that, your brain goes in different zigzags. But it seems like I'm asking, I guess, it's like as you are assembled, your emptiness is composed of everything, right? That ever happened to you or came to you. And then the impermanence is how it like changes, so that you're in a process almost, like your process of figuring out.
So if it changes, then what was no more,
Yeah,
and what you think is right in front of you isn't.
right, because it's moving. And really thinking about it.
There are, I mean, we've read 43 of these, and I could probably pull out every one of those and say something specifically important to me from every one of them. You know, I encourage you to keep reading Genjo Koan where you are, but I really encourage you to join our Tea with Dogen every Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock. And if you're interested, Diana or Miyagetsu, or I can give you the Genzan's email, and you just write them. I mean, we can invite you, but I think I personally feel it's for him to say, yes, come on in.
I gotta get through my precepts first.
Not one, not two.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else before I call on Sam again? I don't mean anything. I just want to give everybody a chance, please. Yes, online. I can't see who it is.
It's Patricia.
Hi, oh my darling, hi.
Hi, very good to see you.
Two.
I think this represents so much of what's perceived as the inscrutability of Zen. So I appreciate you talking about your struggle and kind of breaking through kind of the intellectualization of Dogen and getting to some essence that I think is really important that we can take away from this talk with you. So I'm grateful. Thank you, Shishin.
Patricia, and I'm also grateful for your dog, whose tail was going like this the whole time you were talking. It was right there. Right there. Oh, stop. There you go.
That's right. That's right.
That's Genjo
Thank
Koan.
you. That's right. That's right.
Yes. Anyone else online? Sam.
Okay, yeah, thank you for calling. I don't know if you have an answer to this, but I thought it was interesting that one of the books you read had the literal translation and then I guess interpreted, or just the best interpretation of it with the translation.
No, these are, you can consider a translation and interpretation. They are translations. That's not interpretive. Any interpretation comes from comments at the beginning which says what they think Dogen was doing at the time, or the context. But there's no real interpretation. We have to make our own interpretations. About that, by the way, most of these were talks given in his center. Sometimes they're just pieces that he wrote, and occasionally, like the one we just read, I guess, is something that he wrote and presented to a wealthy shogun. He was very caught up in the politics of his day, and also with Tendai Buddhism and trying to move from it, which was the Buddhism of the shoguns, move from it into what he thought they should all know, which was Zen, and he was on a tightrope. By the way, he died at age 53.
Mark, thank you very much for giving us a real insight into what it is to be a Dogen student. It is. Thank you so much, and a Zen student too.
Thank you. It's sort of like being a bear student.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of hope involved there, but I don't know.
A lot of delusion. Say that again. A lot of delusion in being a Bears fan.
Is there a big difference in the interpretations?
In the translations?
In the translations.
No, I tried to say that. Not tremendous difference. And enough that it's worthwhile for us. Kaz tends to write in very plain English. Nishijima and Cross tend to, they write with a lot of footnotes, which are helpful, but it's pretty straightforward English. And the Zen Translation Project is pretty straightforward English. Nishiyama, I find, it's written by a Japanese guy who doesn't know English that well, it strikes me, and the Mount Shasta Abbey is okay, there's nothing outstanding about it. I mean, the three that I mentioned, Kaz, Nishijima, and Cross, and the Zen, Soda Zen Translation Project are, I think, the ones that we all like the best. Am I right? Those are the ones you like? Okay. Last question, or comment? Yeah, I mean, there's food waiting.
I just quickly, I was curious, the AI translation, did you find that provided any additional?
No, it was just fun. Yeah, it was just fun. It didn't give me any new insight. But, might have. Now, you could ask it, what is this telling you? And it'll tell you something that might be just BS, That's the problem. I mean, you have to really know whether the answer it gives you have to know enough to tell whether the answer it gives you is right or not. So I don't do that. Okay, guys, thank you again so much. I'm so happy to be a member of this